Let's get started. I'm Hardeep Gulati. I'm the CEO for Powerschool. I think most of you probably know the Powerschool story a little bit. We've been around almost more than 20 years. But it's a little bit of a new Powerschool story. And before I start that, one of the key challenges why the new Powerschool in the last 20 months started is when you look at all the problems on the challenges in education. And there's so much of discussion on that in this forum, every education forum, every newspaper you pick up, every magazine you pick up, they all talk about the challenges in education. And a lot of time we are kind of also talking about that to be a challenge really of our district, our bureaucracy, our sometimes even blaming the teachers. But in reality, I've spent a lot of time in different industries, and I can tell you one thing is that as a technology vendors, actually we have failed K-12 in a big way in the last few years. Most of the technology companies haven't really scaled their solutions to become a more valuable provider for the districts, and the amount of fragmentation you see in technology is just unfortunate, right? And that's what all districts are having to reinvent the wheel. The districts are having to do a lot of work bringing technologies together. And when you talk about so much of money as a US government reporting into each of the districts and all, we can really help optimize and improve those efficiencies significantly. The challenge what has been is that there's been no vendor who's been really build the scale and providing what districts need and helping them achieve some of their objectives. So we started with a mission is that we want to be the company who's going to help be a more holistic provider, work with the districts so they are not having to reinvent the wheel on multiple fronts, achieve the scale so we can pass those efficiencies and back to the district and states. So now in 20 months and 7 acquisitions later and $900 million later, we are one of the largest K-12 technology player right now in the North American market. We reach every other child in North America with 32 million kids. And giving you a sense of a little bit of 7,500 districts. We do business with 70 other countries, mostly around American education schools and international schools. But really our focus is North America. When you look at from the opportunity from our impact, not only we reached 32 million kids, we actually reached to the 60 million parents as well. What's important is that, and we'll talk about a little bit on the driver why that's important, is the parent engagement directly translates to better student engagement. And student engagement directly translates to better student performance. How we really bring all the constraints together is a big part of our focus. The market is very big, but at the same time, it has been siloed in the past. Now, just from, again, a lot of you are investors here, so understanding as a company from a scale perspective, we are about, last year we were 250 million revenue, about 100, this year will be about 100 million cash EBITDA, 270 million of revenue. So we definitely, from a scale perspective, when you look at other SIS players, you look at other learning management players in the market, and they look at the K-12 business, most of them are 1/6 or 1/5 the size there. So let's talk a little bit about the history, and then we'll talk about the solution. As I mentioned, we started back in 97. We were part of Apple before, when Steve Jobs had a big focus on really education as a platform from Apple, and you would say that they have kind of missed the boat a little bit now, and that focus is coming back up. Once Steve had left Apple, they focused more on consumerization, Pearson got an opportunity to take Powerschool away from Apple and become part of Pearson. And as you see, Pearson had a pretty good run. We really grew under Pearson to almost 25% of the market. But in the last few years, as you know, Pearson have been scaling back from all their focus to a lot more about content and more about, even if you've read the news last week, more about higher ed. So that's definitely was an opportunity. We saw that as an opportunity to take Powerschool out of Pearson and build the vision we talked about in bringing together these acquisitions, which will help us scale. Now, there is a method to these acquisitions. When you look at the next chart, they'll say why we did this 7 acquisition. When you look at a spectrum of all the things the school needs, all the way from the administrative side, to the classroom side, and even how you access to the home, there's a lot of different pieces what the districts need. Today, they have to go to every different vendor for each of those pieces. And when you need to do reporting to meet your state compliance or federal compliance, you have to make that all together. When you need workflows across different systems, the IT people have to make that together. When you have to enter data from one system to another, you'll be surprised how many districts, how many people manually enter the data, including even grade data between one system to another. And then if you talk about the productivity aspects of that, for the teachers, and we talk about technology should not be a way to, as a hindrance to a teacher, it's about how we can really improve the efficiency with the teachers. They spend 50% of their time on administrative tasks, having to touch different systems from an administrative or in the classroom. And the worst, even with all, if you take the administration costs, the duplication costs, the data integrity costs, the fact that you cannot have a real-time view of what's happening in your education, what's happening in your classroom, where does your kids are, and what kind of investments you're making as a district and whether they're giving you the right returns, that is always a backward view mirror. So we saw that as an opportunity in bringing together the best-in-class assets to help us create this unified platform, which allows us to achieve all the different perspectives. Let's talk a little bit about each of the platform, and I think that will give you a sense why we picked these companies. And if you go around, there are hundreds of education platform companies right now out there, and some of them are looking for funding, some are even trying to sell. The challenge we were looking when we were looking at all these different companies is that what are the companies who have good technology, good teams, who have good customer base, where there's opportunity for us to really grow that and scale that to the national level. Take example, InfoSnap, the best-in-class registration and enrollment process. We have about 7 million kids on that platform. So if you need to do any enrollment to the schools, if you've ever enrolled into a public district, you get all those forms. We basically automate that entire process, especially now with the focus on focus on choice and voucher. We help manage that entire process as well with open enrollment as well as choice. The other acquisition specialist on the TiNet side, if last month if you saw the Supreme Court ruling, one of the biggest thing which was called out is transparency and accountability for how we are really teaching our special needs kid. And one of the big problems with the current special ed solutions have been is that they are they do a good job of tracking the formality of case management and how a special need and what you need to do with that kid. But that information sits in a form. There is no visibility of that information and how the progress is to a teacher when the teacher is teaching in a class. The special need counselor doesn't have information of some of the activity that are happening. Those people have to connect the dots themselves, so technology doesn't help them transfer that information. And then if you're looking at a personalized learning path for the special need kids, all that is done offline with no clear traceable way to really see whether you actually did that. So how we brought the entire special education platform into the classroom, connected with the rest of the information, helps now districts have a better accountability and traceability on, are you truly effectively making the right investments for the special need kids? We have some of the biggest states. New York City School is a big, with million-plus kids on that. We have Chicago Public School with 300,000, and we have 5 million other kids across multiple districts using that platform. The SRB Trillium, that was our way to get into Canada. We combine now, it's just like in US, every other child in Canada uses our system as well. And as you can imagine, Canada provinces have different requirements, different regulations, and we are able to meet those needs and yet provide the broader holistic solution to the Canadian districts as well. Recently, the entire province of Calgary just signed up with us on the full platform there as well. The other piece was the Erp Hr and Finance, tying not just from the student side, which is typically tracking all your class schedules, the student master record, everything about the student, everything happening in the district, but also tying it up to the HR payroll as well as the financial side of the management. We have a couple of entire states on that platform, but again, about 5 million students across different districts. That also allowed us to not just link the student data also with your financial and HR data, so truly you can have a more holistic financial and budget planning. Going back to the efficiencies, you can see where are the right investment areas from a district perspective and what kind of outcomes you're seeing. Are they actually improving the student outcome? So there's only one other vendor who even provides an ERP and SI solution. Otherwise, you again had all the fragmentation where all different pieces, if a district needs it, has to buy from all different pieces. Now, what's even more exciting is the classroom side. This is where our kids are learning. This is where our teachers are spending majority of the time. Today, a teacher on average touches 10 different systems in a week in a school. 97% of the teachers have called out, and I have a study which I can point to about the inefficiencies around the administrative side. So how do you bring together all aspects of the grade book, the attendance, the learning, the assessment, the behavior, all in special ed, all into one experience? And that's something which is truly game-changing, because that not only allows productivity benefit for the teachers, as well as from an experience benefit to the students, but now you can have a much more real-time access to know where the kids are. And I'll show you in a minute so you can get a better sense. Now, our solution doesn't stop there. We have 12 million users today on our mobile platform. We are providing more mobile capabilities, which will bring the additional student and parents to that platform. So rather than just going to a parent portal, in today's world, everybody operates on mobile. So that allows them to even be more connected. It's amazing is the power of the mobile platform in terms of how you can really engage both the student and parent through that. And the opportunity for us to not just take that information, connect to it, but even do education beyond, outside the classroom, into the home for supplemental. That's the holistic picture. What that allows us to is, when we go to the district and states, we are a much more bigger holistic partner to them on addressing the different aspects. And a lot of time, in fact, majority of the time, when districts look at it, is it going to cost me a lot? And in the ROI studies we did with a lot of districts, we're actually comes out to be always much cheaper and better for them than when they're going with each system, because they're spending time on integrations, they're spending time on reporting, they're spending time on training of all those multiple systems, maintenance of those multiple systems, and allows us to really optimize the budgets, which is on top of mind for most of the district and states. So it's a very exciting opportunity for us to really provide a more holistic environment to our district and states. Let's talk about a little bit now on the classroom side, and I think one of the things, as I've been mentioning about, is again, everybody knows about the challenges we hear in the education, but one of the major things when you look at it, how do you drive teacher productivity, but also the student engagement, which are directly transferred to the dropout rates, which are directly transferable to the attendance, which is again drives to the dropout. And here's, when you start looking at it, this is not just the education, there's also a financial problem for the districts. If districts lose one kid, they just not lose one kid who drops out, they also lose somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 of funding. So the ROI for them to drive that engagement is to that funding. When that funding is disappearing, now you're impacting the scale, you're impacting the broader education in the broader district as well. So this is top of the mind for the districts in terms of how do they improve that. So I was mentioning about the study we did, and you look, again, given the time, we don't have enough time, but disparate and siloed technologies was pointed as the #1 challenge for teachers today. So how do we solve that? This is the example of a unified classroom. Now the beauty of this platform is when you look at it, when you come in, the teachers can, in the morning, if they open it up, they see from those standards, how did my kids did on what I taught them yesterday? The system automatically takes their grading, and if they were done, it was a quiz, it already feeds, it's already have fed that data based on what students submitted in the night. That data is already mapped in, and I can see if the kids actually got the concept I taught them yesterday or not. And now once you have know if there are only few kids who did not get the concept, I can maybe do a personalized plan for just those kids. If majority of the kids didn't get it, I can do a much more, take up an open education resource or take another content and try to teach them again. That mechanism today is not available. Most of the time, teachers have to literally, after a month, realize did the kids actually are keeping up pace, and who are the kids which are falling behind. So this gives an early warning systems right real time to them. It gives them ability to make an impact real time. And that's kind of the beauty of the environment, is which right now that information sits in 5 different systems. The districts who are using us, we were able to improve math performance in grade 4 and grade 8, by the way, this is where we are really significantly behind from the rest of the world in terms of proficiency of math in our schools. This district in Virginia, we were able to make a difference of 75% points, literally from a 25% pass rate to a 75% pass rate in the grade 4. That's significant impact you're making to the kids' future and to the broader education gap. In terms of the engagement, one of the things as we were talking about, if your kids are anything like my kids, how you drive gamification, how do you give them an opportunity where behavior aspects, a lot of time, the big part of how they are paying attention in the class or not. If they come back and say the teacher was boring, or if I didn't really, that they're going to start falling behind, right? How to really change that aspect where the kids are actually much more engaged in the classroom. So both from a communication perspective, again, in the unified classroom, we've brought in the entire teacher, parent, student collaboration in there, so you teachers can see which kids are engaged. As a parent, you can see is the kids participating in the different aspects the teacher have brought in. You can use the power of the platform to come up with a recommended personalized. So we are augmenting the teachers in giving recommended content right to the students based on their engagement level. Now, a lot of time people think personalized learning is just a factor of learning management system. Now, I've come from a corporate learning management platform as well as a higher education platform. And the reality is that if you look at every person learns differently. Every kid learns differently as well. The aspects on the kid, when you're looking at the personalized learning path, is different when you're looking to see not just based on their learning engagement, but you're more holistic about the kid. If they had a attendance issue, that what you're teaching them is not a factor of how you're teaching them. They might actually have something else going on where they were outside the school, and that's why they're falling behind. So if you just look at a learning management system, which have no understanding of what's happening in the kid's life, you will have false negatives. And the holistic personalized information, when you bring in all those different aspects on the student data, their behavior data, their engagement data, their information about the attendance, the information about their personalized aspects of their demographics, all that really helps you have a much more personalized learning ability to that. And we're also tapping into the open education resources to tag all this content. So not just you're relied on the big content players, you're actually districts are able to achieve benefit of all that open education resources and provide the cognitive paths, not just within the classroom, but even with your mobile applications right into the contextual into the home. And the beauty is that this is not just great for the teachers and the students from an administrative perspective. That's one of the biggest challenges all of our districts have, is that how do I make sense of all the investment I'm doing, and how we have actually helped drive that comprehensive aspects of our scale, the value for doing business with all these different districts and 12 different state level contracts. We're able to provide a much more holistic data to the states and districts in giving them different aspects of how do you achieve better scores, how do you increase student performance, and you're able to do a much more holistic review of that. Again, today, if you look at it from if you're a dish solution, if you're doing all the different pieces, every district has to reinvent the wheel and get those sense. We're able to give them a much more real-time view of that. That's what's driving a lot of our success and growth. We're seeing a huge amount of adoption of our different pieces into different states and districts. And exciting to be part and work with these districts and states to really help improve the education experience. So it's been exciting. We are, now when we started about 20 months back, we were about 400 people. Now we are a 1,400 strong team working very closely with 7,500 districts, and in a lot of cases, even with the entire states, to helping drive those improvements. So excited to be a part of Powerschool, and the journey ahead is even more exciting for us. I know we are only about a couple of minutes left. I'm happy to take any questions in the break, but if you have one or two questions, I can take them right now.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, do you ever envision offering products directly to families, or do you think you'll always go through the district?
No, we are envisioning offering, and we have had a lot of discussion with some of the districts on how do we make sure that some of the personalized learning paths, which when we go to the home, can even be offered directly to the parents. Interestingly, a lot of districts are interested to offer those kind of capabilities on personalized learning part, so they want to sponsor those programs as well. We are working with some of the foundations as well to look at where the kids are underprivileged or the districts, rural districts, how do we make sure that they may not have the funds so we can subsidize some of that. But part of that path also is to actually make it directly available to the kids. I think there is a good opportunity. If today, if your kid, on average, a parent spends about $1,000 a year additional on supplemental education, at least if you look at the affluent families, which is again a big portion of 20 million families in North America. So even if the fact that we know the context, we know exactly what's happening in the classroom, we know where the kids are struggling, we can help them much more personalize that supplemental education. And we're working with other supplemental providers to help, work through us to help provide the context and those services and content.
Hi. So would you consider yourself the sort of the one-stop shop, the big difference, the LMS, the SIS, what every school's gone through as that sort of silver bullet to link it? How does that relate as well to online learning platforms, and within districts, people are talking more going towards the overcrowding of schools, how to have online courses. And what is the exact kind of LMS application for online courses?
Sure. So we do have actually a few online virtual schools who actually use our platform from enrollment and even managing some of the student information, because they have the same challenge of managing it. And our two LMS, which can manage some of the digital content. In a way, if you look at some of the districts, both from an online, if you're running a summer programs, we help them run those programs online. If you're looking extra courses or you're trying to get college preparedness for your kids, they can run those systems in our. The platform we did acquire was Haiku Learning. We had pretty good adoption of that platform, and one of the beauty of that platform, it designed with K-12. It actually originated from K-12 and already focused, most of the LMS focus on higher ed and corporate. So K-12 gets a lower priority in terms of feature. I always talk about is if I put my seventh grader onto a LMS system, they're not going to go and search for courses and take it, right? And you get good adoption from a high school, somewhat from the LMS systems, but adoption rates within elementary and middle school are less than 20%. And this is where Haiku had a great advantage of the interaction is more like how teacher can create pages, class pages, and kind of build from that. And that's the exciting part of it. But with that said, we also work with the corporate, other LMS environments. So for your college preparedness, you can still link to any of the digital content you might have into the environment. Good. We are right on time, but if you have any further questions, I'll be around for the next 30 minutes and happy to take that. Thank you again for your interest in taking the time to meet us today.